Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the podcast known as Two Men in Black and White. We're here for another exciting episode because the guy in Washington never stops. The occupant of the Oval is at it again, just trying to screw more things up. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Brock Ganeles, here to talk about the latest in the taco movement. Of course, the tariffs are what everybody is talking about today in D.C. Trump always chickens out. And he can't stand that nickname, and I love it. I'm already seeing the banners. Let's go, Taco. That's my favorite. Remember the Let's Go, Brandon? Let's go, Taco. And Taco has a much better ring to it. You can rhyme that with a whole lot more things than Brandon. So the U.S. Court of Appeals issued the administrative stay of the lower court's ruling on these tariffs, right? And the courts are holding firm, right? It's just getting someone to be able to enforce these court rulings that has been the issue. Help us clear it up, Brock. Where are we now in terms of the tariffs? Because you can't keep up with this stuff. I mean, this guy goes back and forth on a daily basis.
Well, I guess the higher court gave, in essence, Trump's team a stay so he can keep the tariffs in place. He's in constant backpedal on the dollars because the economy's in decline, right? Unemployment numbers are ticking up already. Q1 gross domestic product was in the negative. So we're, working our way towards recession, which we're probably already in. The ports are kind of empty, right? Prices are going up, company after company. Today it was Gap, put up a good first quarter, but said, the tariffs are going to cost them about $100 million in profitability going forward in the rest of the year. So corporate America has pointed out how they're going to be losing money. So the markets have reacted. The Wall Street bros came with the taco, which has had legs. I saw like a taco man to macho man. I mean, that was my favorite one today. So Trump's, in a way, and Trump has this, we always say like he has that sense. He's a moron, but he does have the sense when things are moving against him. Mm-hmm. And tries to figure out how to navigate and bullshit his way out of it. So I'm wondering what he's going to do with tariffs. If he's going to not like the fact that he was chickening out and come harder over the top. I don't think so because the markets have spoken against that.
Right.
So I think he's going to try to figure out a way to reduce tariffs, but announce that he won.
Right.
And sell us on the fact that he won something along the way.
Right.
Because, the courts have held, and Jerome Powell at the Fed met with Trump face to face. And basically, the story coming out of the meeting is he told Trump that the Fed's decisions will not be political.
Right.
Which means they will not be what Trump wants them to do, which is cut rates, because he's too worried about inflation.
Which is something we have not seen anyone standing up to Trump, especially to his face and telling him, nah, I'm not going to play your game. We're not playing politics with the markets and with, my financial future and many millions of Americans' financial futures as well. And that is somewhat refreshing. I mean, he was wanted to fire the guy because he wouldn't do it his way. But, again, why would you take any advice if you're the Fed chair from this moron?
It's great. He can't be, and he's already told Trump that Trump cannot fire him. Like it's like legally can't fire him. So, he is acting as an independent agent, as we would hope the judiciary would do. And in a lot of cases, it has. The problem with the judiciary is they don't have an enforcement arm. So like they can mandate that the Trump administration has to send a plane down to El Salvador and basically load it back up with, American citizens and American occupants and fly them back here so that they can get due process. But who's going to make the administration fuel up the jet and fly it down there? Like there's just no mechanism for that to actually be carried through. But in terms of the Fed, Powell does have control over the rates. So like Trump literally can't just step in and steamroll the Fed. Right. Thankfully, we have some guardrails in our system. Yeah. Not many, but we have some.
How about, this Caroline Levitt rant about, how dare Amazon tell people how much the tariffs are going to cost them extra? What do you mean? We deserve to know why our cost of living is going through the roof. We deserve to have a breakdown of what we're paying for and what it is and where it goes. Right? You keep telling us that this tax is being paid by China. China's not paying these taxes. We are. Right? So, I don't understand how they think they can have everything both ways. They think that everything always has to be in their favor. And that's because they really are, we've said this before, they're really not good at what they're doing, right? Because they're not governing, but they're heisting, they're boosting. They're basically stealing from the American people. They're not good at it. They can't remember all their lies, and the policies suck. I
Yeah.
mean, they don't have any signature legislation. This bill is insane. And if this thing goes through, we are in big, big trouble.
Well, this bill goes beyond economics too. This bill like reorients the relationship between the executive branch and the judicial branch. Like this bill has so much fucking, so many hand grenades buried deep in it that it's an absurd. Only Project 2025 could even write this shit down and think that they could pull it off. But they've been so successful so far. I think they can get anything done and push anything through.
Right.
Sadly, maybe they're fucking right.
Right. And again, here we are as Americans sitting around waiting and watching. Are we just going to watch as we slow walk, our democracy into an authoritarian rule? I mean, we really want this guy to be king? I mean, and if we were going to have a king, I like to think it wouldn't be this guy.
The well-renowned Fiona Hill, who made her fame at the Ukraine trial back in the Ukraine the first impeachment around the Ukraine investment when the famous shakedown of Zelensky on the arms deal. Yeah, it was out just this morning saying that she sees America just moving steadily towards a repressive state and compared, America's path to Hungary and Turkey, to European countries that are now that were democracies and now really been taken over by autocrats and are really kind of false democracies, right? They still would call themselves democracies, but they're fascist states now. They don't have real elections, and they have basically one man rule.
Right.
And she says we're moving and we're on that path, and she doesn't see any speed bumps to that path,
which is the sad part, right? Because go back to the early 2000s when elections really began to become contentious, in my lifetime, right? The hanging chads. And, that's when I really got tuned into, to elections. I mean, I've been working in TV for a decade already. The early 90s were, Bill Clinton. And, it wasn't nearly as contentious as we started seeing in the early 2000s. The 92 election, 96 election. We did have the Monica Lewinsky, scandal, if you will, but that's child's play compared to what we're seeing now. So, I mean, think about the steady erosion, of our systematic norms that we've been on since, the hanging chads, right? And Al Gore's concession. I mean, it has been a steady downward spiral, if you will. President Obama kind of flatlined us. White America was so upset with this black man not making any mistakes that, we couldn't really enjoy the huge cleanup that he had to do, right? Because we were so busy looking at and examining the burden of his skin color, right, that we couldn't get past that to deal with the accomplishments, right? Remember Joe Biden's famous, off mic comment when they passed the healthcare bill. This is a big fucking deal.
Yeah. Yeah, the right one to talk about tan suits. And I think didn't he have like Grey Poupon mustard one time? And that was like, that lasted a week as a scandal, right? I mean, those stories lasted longer than, Trump, having 100 crypto bros in the White House. No one knows the names of who showed up. All we know is that it lined his pockets and somehow he's already made an extra $2 billion personally in his first 140 days in office. And it's like it's the most lucrative job, in the history of the world.
Right.
While the rest of the country gets poorer.
And that's the thing. Scott Jennings and these right-wing loonies will look you dead in the face and tell you that this bill is not going to make anyone poorer. I saw clips of him going viral on social media with him talking about who are these poor people? Like, where are they? I mean, again, remember when I talked about people being so far removed that they can't relate? We were talking about the Heritage Foundation, right? These people have been rich for so long and been so well off that they're so far removed from even poor white America. They don't understand what it is in Appalachia.
Duffy, the transportation secretary, was out today saying that liberals try to convince people to go on public transportation, even though it's so dangerous for them in the cities. So, like, that's a liberal initiative to send people into harm's way by like going into the subways. Like, and that's the head of transportation in the country, right? The guy's probably never literally been on
But on a
like a
subway.
subway. Yeah.
Right.
Like, it's not even a part of his lived experience, doesn't even know what. He's just trying to hit a couple buzzwords and feed a Fox audience for the day.
That part right there, right? I think you touched on it a couple days ago. It's almost like the Southern strategy coming back, right? You can't say the N word anymore, so you say busing, right? We can't say the N word, so we say, go to the inner city and get on public transportation and see if you don't die,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Here's a guy who's supposed to be making our public transportation systems better, more efficient, right? With more reach. We got a public transportation system here in Metro Atlanta. You can't get anywhere on it. It's like one of those Piggly Wiggly rides, at Christmas time in the mall where it goes around to one store and back to the other one. I mean, you can't get anywhere, and you can't pick it up, out here where I live because there's been so much growth, right? And the public transportation, the bus, the train hasn't kept up with the growth. So, and no one's accounted for it. Now you waste more time in traffic around Metro Atlanta, right? And many other cities, right? Because no one's planning for it. But, the infrastructure bill had to go, right? We had to get rid of that. We're no longer concerned about our infrastructure. Like, how do these rich people get around? Like, what roads are they taking? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, they're still driving in fancy air conditioned cars, right? Listening to podcasts.
Right.
Because they don't want to really be with the people, right? It's like this mini apartheidness of America, right? This
Right.
segregation that Project 2025 is trying to institute, right? It's school vouchers. Why should everyone have to go to the public school?
Right.
Why can't people go to the school of their choice, right? Like AKA, white people they don't want to be bundled in with the others, so they get at their school that's going to be better in their own little,
Their own little
mini
enclave.
utopia. They're mini utopia. They don't want to have to go on public transportation with the others. Could
Right.
get hurt down there, right? Why? Well, that's a liberal thing. That's a woke mentality. What, you got to
Right.
go sit next to a black person on a subway? Jesus Christ.
Not me.
Take your life into your hands, right? So Duffy's telling his people, that's not what we're advocating. Why should you have to do that?
Right. Right. And it makes no sense because the urban centers and the urban corridors are where things are happening, right? Look at Washington, D.C. That city has taken off with its metro, right? If you live in anywhere in the city, you can walk to a metro station, right? Even over by our campus, man, they put a metro station over there, property values shot through the roof. Shot through the roof. I know guys that we went to school with that bought row houses down the street within walking distance of that new metro station, and they're millionaires now. The guys that have sold, they're millionaires. And when you don't understand how the urban centers work, how do you expect to, understand how you're going to grow it, how you're going to increase connectivity, right? Joe Biden has been taking the train, from Delaware down to DC for how long? Right? As long as he's been in public service. The only time he didn't do it is when he was vice president and president. So, there has to be, we've got to have that racial reckoning, first of all. But in it, we need to include class, or we have to have a class reckoning. And in it, We need to include race.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as you're saying that. I was thinking about how much MAGA like demonizes the cities in America, even though where that's so much of the wealth is generated, and how much focus is spent on bringing manufacturing back to small town USA, and so much like honorarium of the farmers and the rural life, because that's the red state swath, when in reality they end up not taking care of the farmers, right? And the manufacturing, everyone sort of let die. But where the engines of growth are in America are in the cities. They're the melting pot areas. They're the one place in America where actually we have a multicultural and multiracial, society, right? They're different societies, right?
Right.
So the cities are all demonized as being liberal and woke
Right.
and quote urban
Right.
because they actually have people of color there. And the whole play is to the suburbs. Hey, you don't want to be like the cities.
Right.
And to rural America, which is like you're the real Americans, and that's you have the America that quote we really want, right? So that's we need to ruralize America in the Project 2020-25 world, right? And so it's just not a winning hand because that's where the economic growth is fueled.
Right.
It's happening in the cities.
And take a look at one of the big topics here for the mayoral race last time around was the gentrification of Atlanta. Where people have grown up, maybe in the English Avenue Vine City corridor and can't afford to stay there anymore, can't afford to own property in the neighborhood they grew up in because white Atlantans are coming back to the city because they want to be closer to the city, right? They don't want to have to deal with the traffic. They don't want to have to sit for 2 hours to get to the airport. It's a 40-mile drive. You don't want to get stuck like that. Convenience of the city center, the restaurants, the culture, right? The sporting events, right? Like Atlanta is a booming city.
But it's the twisted irony. If you don't have good public transportation, then everybody has to drive into the cities. If everyone's driving in the cities, there's too much traffic. Then people spend half their life commuting, sitting in their car in traffic. Then they have a miserable life. So then they're like, well, I want to be closer to the action or closer to where my job is. So then they move back into the city.
Yep. Yep.
They're all because, it all kind of ties to the fact, imagine if we had like really high-speed trains and really efficient public transportation. It wouldn't be so bad to live 45 minutes outside the city if you actually could get in and out pretty efficiently, which you kind of have in the New York area. It's one of the good things about New York. It's like you have a very convenient, slick, convenient way of getting in and out of the city. So the suburbs are very, very wealthy because so many people can live out there and get to the city in a reasonable time frame. I don't want to say no one because a lot of people do because there's traffic, but like hundreds of thousands of people commute in public transportation to a city like New York, right?
Every day. If it ain't a million, because other nations have figured it out, just like healthcare, right? How do all these other nations have high-speed rail, right? We're still over here talking about we're bringing coal back, big, beautiful coal, right? We want coal. The state of Ohio just said, nah, we're not doing coal anymore. We're taking them all off the line. And by the way, taxpayers, you don't have to foot the bill for us to keep these coal mines online anymore. That's done. Coal is not coming back. Coal is 1940s? We're out of here. We're on to clean energy, right? And why are these folks so hell-bent on living in the past? They want to take us 50 years back in every aspect of our lives.
Well, they're funded by the energy companies. So like you follow the money, right? So, the energy companies don't want to lose their business, right? So they're funding every think tank and they're funding every MAGA politician, Trump on down. And so they're getting a change in policy away from, in essence, smarter technologies, right? And it all, it ties into the anti-intellectualism is what's going on in the universities is that walking back. And I guess this decision that like we can walk America back, the elites are still going to make their money, but in walking it back, power is going to consolidate amongst fewer, white Americans, basically. and
Right.
you're going to have an underclass of white people, and then you're going to have the others, and none of them are going to have much of a say in shit. Like they're just going to be, and as much as we can, we're going to get rid of them. Scariest news of today was I saw a story where Trump and I guess Kristi Noem like are all freaking out because we're not deporting enough
No.
people fast enough,
No.
and they're looking to bump up like the daily quotas of how many people, how many brown people get detained. So
Right.
now they're at schools, they're at the courthouses, like they're just picking off brown people wherever they think they're easy to find.
Yeah, was it a Nordic student that was removed from Harvard University for safety reasons? I
I didn't
mean,
see that story.
yeah, you shouldn't have to worry. You got blonde hair, blue eyes. I don't think they're gonna disappear you. But in a related story, Amazon is selling those black vests and the accoutrements of those ICE agents. So you can,
Black vest and a mask and like what, a fake badge that
yeah,
says
you can get everything you need right on Amazon. And so you can go out here and start disappearing people yourself, right? Because remember, Kristi Noem has not required these lunatics with the masks on, right, to identify themselves, right? And to wear some sort of identification tag or otherwise that says who exactly they are, which is, we're in America, right?
Yeah, I'm waiting. I mean, shit, if Gretchen Whitmer's kidnappers are going to get pardoned, I mean, I assume people, Patriot Front types, would think that if they just threw a bunch of brown people in the back of vans and
Right,
drove them to the border and kicked them out, that if that was even deemed a crime,
right.
that Trump would bail them out. They'd get pardoned. Like they have a get out of jail free card as white supremacists.
And it's so ridiculous that these people can't even follow norms. But now, like, at what point do we see how this immigration nonsense is impacting business owners, right? Like, when are those business owners, hey, my wait staff is not showing up. Hey, I got nobody to pick my fruits. I got nobody to.
Construction in Florida supposedly is a big debate. Like if they actually start rounding people up and that they won't be able to build anything because they're like,
Yes.
okay, let's find some white people to come out in 120-degree heat here and
Look,
work these jobs. Not to mention picking the fruit. Like there's no white people that taking those jobs, right?
no black
But
people either.
yeah, but
What's those jobs?
there's definitely been a pause in stories on those types of stories about labor shortages and the like that has gone totally quiet. Haven't heard a peep on that in
Not
like
one.
a month. I actually haven't heard much about the ports either in the last couple of weeks and or what's that done, on the shelves. I have seen more stories and TikToks and the like of people walking through shopping centers and pointing out the prices and
Right.
saying they're not down.
No,
Like the
nothing.
price of eggs. Yeah, like don't believe that bullshit.
No,
Shit's expensive.
no. Yeah, we hit our local Kroger and it is a nightmare. All these got nice fresh fruit and vegetables too. This edition of the Two Men in Black podcast brought to you by Aldi, the fresh fruit and vegetables.
Is that Aldi? Is that a southern thing? There's no Aldi's up here. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's like a discount, grocery store. No frills,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Off-brand labels, but hey, stuff is fresh. I've had some steaks from out of there. They cook up nice on the grill, you
we
know?
got we got Tops up here. I wouldn't buy a piece of meat out of the Tops freezer if you had a
Oh,
gun
sorry
to
to
my
hear that.
head.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sorry to hear.
especially now with the current RFK regime in place.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
I live in the country. You could go to like some country store and get like a side of beef that
There
just
you go.
got cut like 5 ago. Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
if you really wanted that. I'm
Yeah,
trying to eat less meat these days, Mark. I'm trying. I'm not a vegetarian yet, but I'm trying to eat healthier as I get older.
you and me both, because we ain't getting no younger.
Call me woke. Go ahead. There we go. Call me
Whoa,
whatever. You know what? My body's telling me to start eating some different shit. So sorry.
be
Sorry.
healthy. You're
Sorry,
woke.
MAGA. Sorry, MAGA tough guys.
So, I just, it's interesting that you sit here and you wake up in the morning wondering what kind of disaster we're going to deal with on a daily basis. And, it just becomes so annoying, man. I'm running around with my grandson earlier today and just thinking, what does he have to look forward to? Because kids don't like, naps, broccoli, the end of recess, right? That's the stuff they don't like, right? So they're happy no matter what. And, when people are looking at their kids and casting these votes, when people are looking at their daughters casting these votes, when people are looking at the women in their lives and casting these votes, like, what did you think was going to happen? Like, how did you not think? I mean, he said he was going to do all this stuff. He said it. Project 2025 put out a memoir. Said what they were going to do.
Mark, I think Trump's approval is even lower than the statistics are showing based upon what we're seeing in these town halls and like I think he's down in the 20s. It doesn't matter because he still has the levers of power and he's still intimidating Congress into following all his actions
scared shit
and policies, right? Even though just because they're afraid of being primaried, there's probably 25% of them that totally agree with Trump. They're as racist and fucking, xenophobic and misogynist and homophobic as Trump is, but the rest of them who are worried about their own asses, like they're still worried about being primary. I'm not even sure Trump has that much sway. I feel like his sway is declining.
Right.
But they won't know it and they won't bet on it till we get there. So I'm not optimistic that we're going to get any change in behavior from anyone on the MAGA side of the ledger.
Yeah. Well, check this out. What do you think about these pardons? Because he pardoned the Grizzlies, and then he pardoned a couple of well-known African-American prisoners and convicted criminals. And I'm wondering if he's going back to his theory where he thought, black people can relate to people in jail.
Yeah. I think he thinks black people will view him positively by him taking care of some gang leaders because they're all thugs and gangsters and therefore they're probably, like the fact that, he's, simpatico with the black gang leaders.
Right. This guy, Larry Hoover, created the Chicago Gangster Disciples or whatever, one of the largest gangs, criminal consortiums in American history. And you're going to let this guy come home?
He's so racist that he thinks black people root for that guy. He's so racist. Because I saw another comment on Trump today that struck me I'd never thought of. And it was like lame-basting Latinos for voting for Trump. And all the Latinos have thought like, oh, it wasn't going to be me.
Right.
I'm a good standing citizen with a good job and this and that. That's not who he's going to go after. And then the person writing the tweet was like, what you don't understand is Trump thinks you're all pieces of shit. So he doesn't care that you're an upstanding citizen and run a small business. You're Latino. He thinks you're all rapists and criminals and gangsters and gang members. Like, so you're all just getting swept up. You thought you were like, almost getting white guy status, but in Trump's mind, you're all the same. You all shouldn't be here. So that's why they don't care about the due process. And the tweet was about the miscalculation made by so many Latino voters. Like, whoops, miscalculation. Yeah, but that's how racist Trump is. That's how negatively he feels about any person of color, that he just assumes the worst and assumes you love the people that are the worst, lumps you all together, and his actions are like,
Right. And the other guy he pardoned was a rapper. I can't tell you this guy's records or his hits or if he has any hits, NBA Youngboy. But you pardon this guy.
But he likes rappers because rappers put him in some songs back in the 90s or something.
Back in the day. Right.
Yeah.
Everybody thought he was.
So he thinks they like
believing his story. Yeah, that was before we knew he was Yosemite Scan. But I thought it was just a clearly feeble attempt, to get some black support. He likes the blacks when they support him. But
he remembers he got a little bit of positive for that like first step stuff, and Van Jones still says good things about Trump on that front, that he did that piece of legislation, that one fucking thing. Right. And I think that he figures he'll throw a bone on a couple. But look at the black people who get pardoned, right? Gangster and a rapper, right? Because that's what he thinks the entire black community is. So if he hooks up a gangster and a rapper, black people are gonna love him, and he'll be able to say, "Black people love me. Look what I did for the black community."
Right.
That's his view of black excellence. That's like who he thinks the leaders are in the black community.
Right.
I know we got to hop. I got a couple quick hits for you. Number one, I did speak to Steve Bauer about the 8th grade spelling bee. He has no recollection of losing that spelling bee to you. Says, "Are you sure about that?" And then went on to say that spelling bees are all bullshit. It's all random words. No one cares about half the fucking words. And that nowadays with like ChatGPT and all this and that, no one has to spell anymore anyway. Spelling, we got machines to do all that for us anyway. So I don't know if you have a reaction to that. Is that just a sore loser thing? White guy can't remember losing to a black guy.
Yeah, why would he remember it? He lost. You know what I mean?
He didn't get the ribbon. He doesn't have that ribbon.
You know, I was the one cheesing walking back down to class after the spelling bee was over, you know, with the medal. I got the trophy, you know.
I kind of agreed with them, though. I hated spelling bees. I always thought it was like some fucking trivia contest of like who could memorize the most random words, the most random words in the dictionary. And I did also do a white person survey of the Triple Lundy. And certainly in the 50 and over crowd, everybody in the white community is well aware that the Triple Lundy was Rodney Dangerfield in Old School or Back to School. And Triple Lundy is clearly white person vernacular for something difficult. A Triple Lundy.
Right. I remember the dive.
Google the clip, anyone who hasn't seen it. For the black community who stayed with us for the full 30 minutes, do a quick Google of Rodney Dangerfield, Back to School, the Triple Lundy, the great sports movies of all time.
Good stuff. I love it. Back to School. Rodney, can't go wrong with Rodney Dangerfield. All right, bro.
A white guy who couldn't get any respect in the 80s, right?
Respect, huh? I had to love him. Everybody loved Rodney. Oh my gosh. All right, bro. That's going to wrap it up. We'll see you tomorrow. Let's stay loud, stay proud. Remember, July 14th, Obama Appreciation Day. If you can't make June 14th. I keep saying July.
Military parade. Donald Trump thinks it's his birthday parade. He's going to be out there homaging himself, pretending he's Kim Jong-un. Fiona Hill is shaking her head as she watches America allow this to go on. That's all part of the path to.
Yeah. Switzerland is beautiful year-round, Brock. Just FYI. We might want to look at some real estate prices there. All right.
Free health care.
There you go.
Universal health care.
Yahtzee. All right, my friend. Have a great night. See you.
All right. Always a pleasure. Talk to you tomorrow.
Peace.
Bye.